Welcome to On the Other Hand. Have you heard people discussing book bans of late? Because recently a Utah author put out an open letter on book banning, and I wanted to highlight it. The opening paragraph says, "As Utah authors and illustrators of books for young readers, we condemn the efforts to suppress, demonize, and ban books from our state's schools and libraries. These attempts overwhelmingly target books by and about LGBTQ people and by and about Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. Historically, these groups have been far underrepresented in books. Over the past decade, the children's book community has made great strides in finally publishing more books that reflect our actual population. This is a positive achievement and one that should be celebrated, not banned." This letter has over 36 other local authors and illustrators who signed it as well, including the fantasy juggernaut Brandon Sanderson. And this letter makes me angry, because if the author who wrote this, or anyone who signed on to it, had done 5 minutes of research, they shouldn't have attached their names. Let me explain. The letter appears to have been published around September 18th, according to this Salt Lake Tribune article, and has a quote from the letter's author that says, "She wrote the letter because she's been concerned about the mood of the country, and that the vitriol and hatred is scary to see as a parent and writer." So it's interesting that the author is worried about the mood of the country and the vitriol that has led to restricted books. So let's see what kinds of books have been banned or restricted, and if vitriol is warranted given their contents. The only 2 instances I can find when I search for Utah banned books was from last year that listed 9 books pulled from a Utah school district's libraries, and one from earlier this year that cited 52 restricted books in a different school district. As for the 9 books from last year, they were restricted because of the sexually explicit conduct and sexual conduct that is found in these books. And according to the American Library Association, the most banned and challenged books across the country were challenged for those very reasons, and several of these books were on the Utah list. The second and more recent instance of book restrictions is when a different Utah school district moved to restrict 52 books within their public school libraries. These books weren't even removed from the libraries, but now require parental permission before a student can check them out. This article listed all the books affected, and in just a minute we'll come back to this list to take a closer look. A third recent article mentions the letter and the 9 and 52 book restrictions respectively, and then talks about a presentation given by a Utah legislator who highlighted 3 of those 52 recently restricted books. The article explains that Utah law says if there is pornographic material in school books, it is deemed to have no serious value for minors, and should be restricted accordingly. The article quotes from the legislator presenting on the subject of sexually explicit books that have been objected to. Now, he showed censored pictures of the contents of these books, but I don't even want to read the descriptions of what he showed, because they are literally pornographic books that were available to be read by minors in public schools. But I'm linking this article in the description, and this article links to the slides presented if you really want to see the extent of the filth for yourselves. The article goes on to outline the process of restricting a given book, that now anytime a complaint is made against a book, it gets reviewed by district staff, and they take the appropriate action for the individual book on account of its content. So it sounds like to me the system is working as it should. People can raise concerns about inappropriate materials that are available to minors, and there's a process to review and deal with those concerns. So, going back to the list of 52 now restricted books in a Utah school district, with the info cited here, I can identify at least 6 of these books that are 100% inappropriate for children. And just by glancing through these titles, there are at least 7 more that by their titles alone seem to be openly bragging about being explicit and also not appropriate for children. And I bet money that most of these restricted books are inappropriate as well, because that is literally what the vetting process is there for. So going back to the letter signed by the Utah authors and illustrators, let's read some key lines with the readily available knowledge that we now have on the subject. Does it matter if the restricted books are written by and about LGBTQ people and by and about Black people? Or does it just matter that books for children in public school libraries should not be sexually explicit? Of course, any given parent or community member shouldn't be able to dictate what books other kids can't read. So what should be, and what is the case, is that a parent or community member can raise concerns over a specific book, and that book will be reviewed for its appropriateness. So this sentence seems to be a mischaracterization of Utah policies. And does restricting a sexually explicit book tell a child, "You shouldn't exist, your story doesn't matter, and we don't want our kids to empathize with you"? No. And as far as I can tell, the connection this letter tries to make between both identity politics and suicide to book banning is purely speculative and ideological. The letter ends by saying that restricting books is divisive and hate-mongering. So this is why this letter makes me angry. If people want to play identity politics around the content and authorship of children's books, that's their prerogative. but to write a letter because you are concerned about vitriol and hatred aimed at certain books, and skip over the literal pornographic nature of said books, makes me think that either 1. This letter was written and endorsed with the best of intentions, using very limited or biased knowledge on the subject, or 2. It was written and endorsed to try to distract from the blatant sexualization of children's books. I assume it was written with the best of intentions, but regardless, the intent of this letter is ill-informed and is a counterproductive argument, as it will only misinform and harm the very children the letter says it's trying to protect. As always, thanks, hope this was informative. And if it was, consider subscribing, or joining me on Odyssey or Rumble, both great YouTube alternatives. Links are in the description.